Well, good evening and welcome to next opportunity for the LEAD coaching program. We're so glad to be here and we're thankful again for the partnership with the sharEvery Global Foundation. I'm excited to bring to the floor Dr. Heather Jackson, who is an experienced educator, experienced school leader, and author who has a lot of information to be able to share with you. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Heather Jackson.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Apart from my name, which you already know, Heather Jackson, I have been an educator and in the industry of education for over 20 years. In that time, instructional leadership has been my heart, my passion. It's been the thing that I just absolutely love and I love talking about. And so today I'm going to really try to rein myself in and my excitement in so I don't keep you here way past everybody's bedtime, right? But I'm calling this presentation Instructional Leadership 101 because there's so many things that you can discuss under the topic of instruction. So many people in a school building, and I'm going to specifically focus on schools in this presentation, but there's so many people within and without the school building who are responsible for instruction. I've been a teacher. I was a principal and assistant superintendent. I was a school improvement coach. And so I've worked in a variety of roles and all really around instructional leadership, which also means I worked a lot with the school building principals and leaders of instruction in the district. And so welcome again. What is instructional leadership specifically? It's really just speaking to the leadership that supports teaching and learning development in a school, right? So it's the person who is primarily responsible for making sure that students learn and teachers teach, right? Teach effectively and that students master content on their grade level. So I want to make sure that I clarify that because we're all teaching and learning at different times. However, to make sure that the instruction is effective and that students are mastering content, that is the role of the instructional leader in the school. And why is that important? Quite obviously, because it improves instruction. The instructional leader supports the leadership of instruction or supports instruction in the school. And that is so that there is an improvement in teaching and learning or an improvement in student outcomes. So students grow and learn and meet standards and master content from the beginning, between the beginning and the end of the school year, let's say. Who are instructional leaders? Well, really, like I said before, everyone, right? When you think of everyone, I mean, even the person who cleans the classroom, if that's their role. A clean classroom helps kids to feel secure and comfortable. They want to learn. The teacher wants to be in the room. She wants to teach. She or he wants to teach. And so even the person who is responsible for cleaning the building is an instructional leader because they add to the ambiance or to the impact. Now, specifically, when we're talking content, when we're talking English and math and science and social studies, who's the instructional leader? It's the principal, it's the vice principal, it's the subject area supervisor, it's the assistant superintendent, it's the superintendent. So it's anyone who has anything to do with how content is presented and how content is received, how content is written. So curriculum, for example, a subject area supervisor would write curriculum that would tell students what there's to know and be able to do. And that also curriculum tells the teacher what to teach and when. And so who is the instructional leader? Everyone. But now specifically at a building level, we're talking about the principal and the vice principal and the subject area supervisor. What does this instructional leader do exactly? They analyze data. They plan based on what they find out from the data. They go into classrooms. They recruit talent. And then they do everything they can to retain the talent that they've recruited or hired. What data does the instructional leader really analyze? It's a variety of data, right? Data is everywhere. but specifically it's test scores, it's attendance, teacher attendance, and student attendance, because everything impacts instruction in the classroom. Classroom observation, formal teacher observation, but also just going into the classroom and sitting down and seeing what's going on, right? Data around staff turnover. If you lose if your English teacher is changing or changes every year, that's going to impact your English scores, right? So that staff turnover data is super important. Curriculum data, curriculum changes. If your reading program changes every year, that's going to impact your test scores. That's also going to impact how your students receive and retain information. That's going to impact how your teachers teach. You're really asking teachers at this point to learn a new program every year. That's not good practice. That's unacceptable and not wise. So that's just a sample of the data that you collect as an instructional leader. Then what do you do once you've collected the data, once you've looked at it, once you've analyzed? Well, you make a plan. Whether you're planning professional development or you're planning what you're going to do when you get in the classrooms, you're always making a plan. And you're using that plan to write professional development trainings throughout the school year. So when I was a school principal, we would look at our student test scores at, I would say, in August, because the students take the test somewhere in May, and then we get the test scores by August. Now we get them actually earlier than that. So you could look at the test scores in June. You look at your end of year teacher observation results, and you use that information after you've analyzed it, after you've said, you know what, Dr. Jackson's students continue to miss the target in terms of reading informational text, for example, right? So we make a plan for how we can help Dr. Jackson look at how she's teaching informational text and make decisions about what curriculum changes we may need to make. So that's an example of a plan or a part of a plan that you would create after you've looked at data. What else does an instructional leader do? It's my favorite thing, y'all. They go in the classrooms. My God. If you don't go in the classrooms, you're not an instructional leader, because the kids are in the classroom, the teachers are in the classroom. That's where instruction is happening, and that is the primary place where the instructional leader must spend most of their time. I would say 75% of your time as the instructional leader has to be in the classroom. What happens when you go into the classroom? You're observing teacher actions. You're listening to the questions they ask. You're looking to see who they call on. There used to be data that said teachers call on boys more than they call on girls. We want to see that, right? So you can have a conversation with the teacher about that. You can ask why. You can make a plan for, well, let's try to call on more girls, right? Because there's also data around the fact that sometimes girls don't want to be called on, right? Our girls are more quiet, boys are more outspoken. So the teacher tends to call on the person who's more outspoken. So we want to bring those things to the teacher's attention, but you can't do that if you don't go in the classrooms. So when you're in the classroom, you're observing the teacher action, you're observing the student action, you're giving feedback to the teacher, and you're collecting data again. And when I say feedback, you're giving real-time feedback. When I go in the classrooms, I will observe. And if I see that there is a student whose head has been down too long, or if I discern that a student has asked a question, but the teacher's response doesn't really answer the question, I may rephrase the question. I actually raise my hand as though I'm a student in the classroom, and I rephrase and ask the question again to the teacher. And that is normally their cue to either reteach content or just answer that question in a different way. But I always tell my teachers before I go in the classroom, this is what I'm going to do. I will ask questions as though I'm a student, so they don't feel as though I'm deliberately trying to make them look bad or put them on the spot. I'm just there as a colleague collaborating in instruction at that time, right? Recruitment, it's so important, especially in this post-COVID era where schools are losing staff left and right, where we have a shortages of not only teachers, but actually school leaders. It's very important that you're constantly recruiting staff. One of the most important parts of recruitment or the recruitment process is really to develop relationships with a college or university, a local college or university, because students are graduating every year, and that could be your pool to pull staff from. And then what do you do once you've recruited staff and they come on board? You retain them. You make them feel welcome. You make them feel at home. One of the things that I used to do is I love food, y'all. I love food, and specifically, I love bread. So I would always have a breakfast once a month, probably the first Monday in the month. And I would bring in bagels and coffee and tea, and I would just meet with my staff. We would eat, we would hang out before the kids came into the building and just really get to know each other. That is a great way to retain staff. You want to build community, you want people to feel welcome, you want them to feel as though they matter to you and they're important. That's one of the things that you do. You also celebrate them. Celebrate birthdays, make birthday announcements to the entire school, right? Give a birthday card. Anything to make people feel that they are important to you. When you think about it, you don't want to go to a job where people just tolerate you. You don't want to go to work someplace where you don't feel like you matter. So when you treat teachers and actually the entire staff, right? Everybody, your front desk people, your security guard, the people who clean the cafeteria, the people who serve food in the cafeteria, when you treat them all like they're important to you and they're important to the building, to the safety of the building, they're part of your community, then you won't have a problem retaining them. Because I'll tell you this, people will stay at a job where they're getting paid less than what they're worth, not significantly less, but less than what they're worth, if they feel as though they're important to their leader and to the team. We spoke about what instructional leaders must do, right? Now, what is it that stops them from doing that? And this is so important because I work with, now that I'm not in a school myself, as a building leader, I am coaching building leaders, and I constantly see roadblocks to them going into the classroom or to them really assuming the role of instructional leadership. And here are the two primary roadblocks that I come across. The first one is the imposter syndrome. And there's so much talk nowadays about the imposter syndrome. The leader does not believe that they can do the job. They don't believe that they're worthy of the job. And so they will, instead of really embracing instruction, they fall back on or do what they used to do before. So if it was, let's say, a physical education teacher, they will go and they will focus on, well, let me go into the gym classroom, right? And that's where they'll stay. Or if they feel like, let me do paperwork because paperwork is important. And that's something that I can do, right? The teachers don't know that I can't do paperwork, or that this is a place for me to hide where no one will judge me. But that's all in your head. Once you've gone through the process of interviewing for a role, preparing, interviewing, and actually passing that interview process, and you've got the job, like just do it, right? Believe that you have the job because you got it on merit, and just do it. And guess what? Can we be real? Even if you got the job because someone heard about you and knew a friend who knew you, you can do the job. You can do the work to become better at the job and to actually stay in the role. I once coached a principal who he was at first a vice principal, and he became the principal when his first principal actually went out sick. And he was stuck in this, I'm just the vice principal role for about the first 6 months of that position. I kept saying to him, but if you've always wanted to be a principal, I need you to actually now embrace that role. You're doing this job now is your audition for that role. And he finally wrapped his head around that and was able to be the principal, but he had to get out of his head first. What's another roadblock? Competing priorities. My God. When you sit in the seat of school leader or district leader, but I'm specifically talking about school leader, there are 1,000,001 things that will stop you from being an instructional leader. 1,000,001 things will stop you from getting into classrooms. 1,000,001. And I listed just 3. I may add on some, but there are quite a few things. And I can say that this whole slide can be its own presentation because this is where a lot of principals get stuck. So what are some of the things that will stop you from really going into classrooms and really becoming that effective instructional leader? Unplanned meetings, parent meetings, student meetings, meetings to plan meetings, being called to the central office to go to a meeting that you didn't know was, on someone's calendar and it was a last minute meeting. I hate meetings, and I especially hate unplanned meetings, but some of them you can't get out of. That's one of the roadblocks. That's one of the competing priorities. You have to think, I have a schedule. I was going to go into Dr. Jackson's class this morning, but now I have a parent who wants to see me. You think about who else can see that parent instead of you, right? What's another competing priority or a roadblock to effective instructional leadership? Discipline issues, fights, disagreements such as parents disagreeing with a teacher disagreeing with a student disagreements, right? Sometimes you are called on to mediate. Another competing priority, curriculum changes. You sometimes have no control over the curriculum changes that happen in the school. You just don't. A central office staff member decides that a math program will change, and it changes, and your staff may or may not receive training prior to the implementation of the new math program. Guess what? As the instructional leader, you now have to spend the time going through those books, going through that program, going through the curriculum document, identifying what standard students are supposed to know and be able to do by the end of March. You have to become now the new curriculum supervisor for your building. That takes time, and that takes you out of the classroom. Just want that to sit there for a minute. That's one of the things that when you become a school leader, you have to learn how to navigate, because it will really stop you from being effective. And this also plays with your head, because you're supposed to be in classrooms, right? And so you now feel guilty at the end of the day because you didn't get to follow your schedule. You didn't get to go into Dr. Jackson's classroom as you planned. And here's the thing, it's not that you were doing something that wasn't important. That's where the guilt comes in. So you need to know the math program, but you also know Dr. Jackson needs your support. She needs you to sit next to a student who is acting up, who only calms down when she's in the room, or she just needs a second pair of eyes. Your teacher is teaching new content. Dr. Jackson's a new teacher. She's teaching content that she needs your help with. But you couldn't get into her classroom because you now had to deal with the discipline issues. That was one of the things that I really, really disliked when I was a building principal. So I learned how to fix it, because I'm telling you right now, the classroom is my favorite place to be. Anything with instruction, anywhere the kids are, where the teachers are, anywhere there's teaching and learning, that's where I'm going. And I had to figure out how to make that my priority, not just on paper, but also in action. So I created a schedule. I learned this from one of my mentors and a superintendent who I worked under, Dr. Rodney Lofton. He said to us, create a schedule. He actually shared with us his schedule for the day. Every moment was scheduled. I created a schedule. I posted it on my door. I gave a copy to My front office staff, I gave a copy actually to all my staff so they would know between 9 and 9:30, I'm in classrooms. I can't meet. I'm more than happy to meet at the times that are open for or labeled meeting times, but not between 9 and 9:30 because I'm in classrooms. And I stuck to my schedule. Was it hard at first? Absolutely. Because when people are used to just walking into your office and having conversations, they will do so. But you put your schedule on the door and you make sure that you stick to it, and they will eventually. What's another way that you can prioritize and get yourself in classrooms? Delegate everything. Especially for new principals, you feel like you have to do everything. You have to do bus duty. You have to do cafeteria duty. You have to do lunch duty. You have to be in the hallway. You have to, you have to, you have to. You have to meet with every parent who walks through the door. You have to, right? You have to take every phone call. You have to respond to every email the minute it comes through. And don't let the email come on your phone. Then you're just doing it. No, that's not going to help your use that's not an effective use of time, and it won't help you to be an effective instructional leader. It actually won't help you to become an effective leader, period. You have to learn how to delegate. There are some schools where they're in the budget, there's money to pay somebody to help in the cafeteria, to help with the bus duty, to help monitor in the hallway. Spend it. Pay them. My God. Pay people to do what you don't have to do so that you can be in the classroom if it's possible. One thing that we got savvy with doing, and we being principals, if there's a teacher who had a free period that there was no class, no meetings planned for that teacher, we would ask that teacher to stay in the cafeteria. We call that a duty period on their schedule. So now we don't have to be in the cafeteria. That teacher will be in the cafeteria. In order for you to be an effective instructional leader, you have got to be in classrooms. And the way for you to get to classrooms is to make sure that you're scheduling your time and you're delegating the duties that you don't need to do, or the duties that take you out of the classroom. I love parents and I love meeting with parents, but I even told my parents, I'll meet with you from 7 to 7:30. I'll meet with you from 4 to 4:30. But once the school day begins, I can't meet with anybody. I just can't. I'm so sorry, because my focus has to be on schools. How do we fix the roadblocks? Remember, I said one of the key things that really stops an instructional leader is that imposter syndrome, that feeling like I'm not good enough, like I can't do the job. Acknowledge what you don't know. That's the first fix. Make peace with what you don't know. Get training on what you don't know. Pay staff to complete minor tasks. I shouldn't even say minor, just any task that you don't have to do, or any task that will take you out of the classroom. If you have it in your budgets, pay staff to do that. Create and follow a daily schedule. Super important. So what do I mean by acknowledge what you don't know? One year, I was tasked with being the assistant principal over math and science. Math was not my favorite subject ever. In fact, I wasn't a good student in math. I had such fear of math. But if that's not my job, then I have to make sure that I learn math. So I really went into classrooms then. I took notes, I asked the teachers questions, and then there were times when I didn't want to ask questions because I felt, can I be honest, I felt stupid. So I went to the math coach for the district and I said, help. And she broke down to me the concepts, what students are doing, how to do this particular problem, what these words mean. I mean, once she explained it to me, then I could do the math. But once what I realized was I was so afraid of math that I wouldn't even I wasn't even able to open my mind to thinking I could actually do math, much more support teachers who are math teachers who went to school to teach math. So I acknowledge that I don't know math. I'm afraid of math. I made peace with that. As I'm talking about it, I'm feeling the anxiety that I felt when I heard that I was going to become the assistant principal over math. But I had to make peace with it and then get the training and sit with a coach to help me learn the math so I could help my teachers. I had to do that. I could have sat on the side and cried, which I did do, but I didn't stay there, right? I had to acknowledge I'm not comfortable here. I don't know this. And then I had to do the work to make sure that I got to know the content. And then creating a schedule is a life changer. You should have that for yourself, whether or not you are using it at your job. I mean, a schedule is just a natural part of everything I do. I have a running schedule in my head. It's on paper, but it's also in my head. So I know every minute of every day where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be working on. Does it fluctuate sometimes? Sometimes, but for the most part, it doesn't. And that's how you train people to honor your schedule, by sticking to your schedule. So, what's the charge for you on your road to becoming an instructional leader? It's to do all the things that I stated in, I believe, the third slide. This is what we do as instructional leaders. We analyze data. We make a plan based on the information that we get from the data. We go into classrooms. That's where the magic happens. That's where teachers are teaching and students are learning. We recruit talented staff members. And once we recruit them, we retain them with specific actions. Remember, no one wants to work in a place where they don't feel valued, where they don't feel like they're adding something to the community. So don't stop at recruiting, continue with retaining. My name is Heather Jackson. I can be reached at info@drheatherjackson.com. I have a website, www.drheatherjackson.com. I also have an ebook that I will be sharing with you with even more information from the slides, but something that I wrote after my own experience as a school leader, because I thought it was so important that other school leaders, especially new school leaders, get this information. Thank you so much.